Welcome back to the podcast. Guys, we're always talking about how to develop companies strategically, right? Each one of our listeners, a lot of you are entrepreneurs that are developing fast-growing brands, and you want to get into a franchise idea. I've got the mastermind of franchise. This is a gentleman who is not shy about the number of brands he's grown, and I'm talking about really big brands. I mean, some of the top growth brands in the country, and he's going to tell you today how to take your business and how to create a franchise that's successful and roll it out, because it is not for the faint of heart, but it's a process, and he's got a proven process for doing that. John, welcome to the show.
Anthony, thanks for having me. My pleasure.
John Hewitt, when you started in this, you started I'm going to give an audience a little bit of the background and really show them, what the brands are that you've grown. Back in 1982, you start with your first franchising group, and which group was that?
Yeah, I bought a company called Jackson Tax Service from his widow. He had 6 offices, and we computerized it. We changed the name to Jackson Hewitt. We built it to almost a $500 million company. 15 years later, public company. 15 years later, we sold it for $483 million.
As you start with that brand, right? So you got 6 units. You get in there, you computerize it, right? You start to, well, I mean, the gift of franchising is really about a system. I mean, my judgment is that when you're buying a franchise, you're buying a system that that works, right? It takes a lot of the support for the entrepreneur, maybe those folks that want to get into the brand. It really guides them. Give me a little bit about when you're putting that together. What's the idea and what's your logic about how you put that together?
Well, I think that to further elaborate on the system part, I have 11 grandchildren, and my 10-year-old grandchild could go to the grocery store and buy some hamburger and some buns and make a higher quality hamburger than McDonald's. But McDonald's is a Fortune 500 company, 40,000 locations around the world. And it's not on the quality of the hamburger. It's on the quality of the system. The system includes everything. It includes the site selection, the visibility, the signage, the marketing, everything about it. And so you need to have a successful franchise, you have to have a successful system of business.
So I get that. Like every entrepreneur wants to create a system for themselves, right? But my judgments, they get stuck in minutia, right? A lot of us entrepreneurs, I've gone through it myself. I've gone through ups and downs of my system being perfect. I got it. Look, we know exactly what to do. 1, 2, 3, right down the list. And then there's days where we mess it all up. And now you take these 6 units that you buy. These 6 tax units that you services, and when you're looking at the way they function, where do you go to start really developing it so they're all exactly the same copy and it makes it easy to replicate?
Well, first of all, you have to write it down. You have to have an operating manual, and you have to be communicated effectively. And one of the things that we did that most franchisors don't do is what I found as we got bigger and bigger. My message didn't get down to the field successfully. That's difficult to get it all the way down to thousands of offices. So what we did is we had over 50 phone calls a year where I was on the call and saying, this is what you need to do this week. This is what you need to do today. And so everyone got the same message. It didn't have to go through layers of people interpreting it, being biased and so forth. So having a system is one thing, but communicating effectively is another.
Nice. I think that's a real key. It happens in companies all the time. It's kind of that operator game. Remember when you were a kid, you'd play, or was it a telephone game? You start one at the table and you go, by the time you got around, and my kids love to mess that game up and, make mom and dad say something foolish at the end. But, that's kind of what happens in a business, right? I mean, so you say a message, it gets to your leadership group and they get a message to their team. And as it trickles down, the people that want their message to come out, right, to the franchisee shows up, and you've circumvented that by literally creating a direct communication with them. That seems like a great platform. Now, I want to go really into the steps of it. So you start to take your, what my goal here is really for the entrepreneur to see, all right, look, I need to create an operating, a standard operating procedure, right? And I think, how deep do you get into that? So from the way you look at a site, let's just kind of back up before the franchisee, right? Who's the right franchisee to be in my business?
Well, I brought in 5,200 franchisees, so I have a lot of experience in answering that question. And what I learned is it does not matter how smart you are, educated you are, experienced you are. What matters is if I do my job, which is I've done for 54 years, is creating the best system in the industry, then your job is to follow that system. And so the superstars were people that followed the system the most. The people that no one, believe it or not, out of 5,200 franchisees, not one has ever followed the system totally, 100%. And if you have children, you understand that because no one listens. It's against human nature. So the superstars listen 98 or 99% of the time. And I created 1,000 millionaires, and also 1,000 people went out of business. And the people that go out of business, they listen less than 90%. So it's Anthony, it's that simple. Having someone listen to the proven methods, follow the recipe.
So you go to the marketplace and you go, look, I've got a franchise to sell. Now let's kind of get into, so you're looking for people that can follow a system. And all right, we'll get into that a little bit more here as we develop on. Now let's go to the system itself. Now you start with these 6 locations and you start to systemize the entire office. Now, give me how far do you go with that? I mean, is it floor plan and layout? How many desks? How many computers? How many phone lines? How detailed are you in the development of a location?
You covered it exactly. Everything is down to a system. You need, in fact, we know in the tax business, we know how many tax returns you're going to do each day during the season. So it's you're going to do 1% of your business on January 18th, and 2% of your business on February 2nd, and we forecast the number of customers, we forecast the number of desks, preparers, receptionists, backroom support, and so forth. So all of it's down to an exact science.
Now, so you start to put that together. So you start looking at, okay, I know when we get, in order for us to get enough volume, because yours is really seasonal. I mean, it's probably one of the most seasonal businesses you can get into, right? I mean, tax preparation, I don't know about you, but I didn't think about any of it until, about typically it was, less than a month before taxes were due. And I think most Americans are kind of in that same ballpark. But you start to create a system for communication, or you start to identify the how many tax packages do you need to get through in a year? Is that kind of the idea? I need to get this to make my whole business work.
Yes.
Okay.
And you budget based on we gauge the market. So for example, it's sort of like Burger King and McDonald's, right? That McDonald's spends $35,000. They do a demographic study to find a location. Burger King doesn't spend anything. They get next to McDonald's, and they can tell by the number of people that go through the drive-through as to the revenue of that McDonald's. So they can judge what their revenue is going to be if they operate effectively. Now, in our business, we have additional information. The IRS gives us the number of tax returns done in the market in that city and by each of our competitors. So we do the same thing. If there's an H&R Block and our tax service isn't there, then we know there's a vacancy sign. We go get next to H&R Block, and we know based on what they're doing, if we're effective, this is what we're going to do each year. And it's growing because when we first go in, the customers travel less than 11 or 12 minutes from where they live to where they file. So when we first go in, we don't have any brand name or little brand name. We build brand name over the years. So you grow as you build brand name and as you build referrals.
All right. So now your system, I'm going to back up because I get into marketing and renewal customers. Let's kind of back up. So first, we want to get our standard operating procedure. So what happens when a customer walks in the door? All right, no, first we went back to just the facility itself. What does the facility need to look like? Where do you put the vacuum cleaner? Where's the extra paper go? Where's the printer? How detailed is that the building space itself?
Well, it's detailed to the office, facing the customer, right? We don't detail the back room, right? For example, we detail the office, the part the customer sees. So that whether there's a radio and what kind of music is playing, and how many waiting chairs. There's typically for every 250 tax returns, there's one desk, and then for every desk, there's two chairs, customer chairs, but there's also three waiting chairs. And so all of it's down to a pretty exact science. And we'll even give you a layout. There in the operating manual, there's examples of layouts of what it looks like. And one thing you'll always want, for example, that you might not think about is you always want your blinds open because you want people to see inside and there's activity inside. You don't want to have on the exterior, you don't want to have closed blinds because activity breeds activity. And signage, for example, color is very important. Most people don't understand this simple concept that red, orange, and yellow aggravate the eye. And therefore, if you're going to have a sign, exterior sign, a lit sign that people are going to see because it's set back in a shopping center, set back 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet from the road, you always want it to be red, yellow, or orange. You don't want it to ever to be blue or black or green. You don't want to be a subtle color. You want to aggravate the eye. And when you think about it, if you look at all the competitors, I mean, McDonald's, what colors does McDonald's have? Yep. And Walmart and Burger King and they spent billions of dollars studying what color that their exterior facility should be. So you have to have it down to a science. So if you want something red, like a in-office sign, then it's in black or blue or green. If you want something to catch the eye as someone's driving by, or walking by, then you have it in red, yellow, or orange. So everything's very scientific.
So now you're really intentional about the layout, which then obviously gives us an investment idea, right? So each franchisee starts to look at their investment in the what it's going to take me to build it. And now you put together that package. Now you're also going to give them how many people and how to train their people. Let's talk about, so now we've got the facility. Now what's the right, all right, who do I hire and what are they going to do every day?
Yeah, we give them the hiring methodology. Then we give them the contract to give the employee. The amount, here's the contract that you give the employee that includes a non-compete. This is how you pay them. You pay them on a bonus system to entice them to do a better job. And so everything's down. And the price of the tax return is built into the computer. So they don't have to think about it, figure it out. It's already built in. So again, it's a science.
So down to you're finding people that have, now are you training the employees during the year, during off seasons? Are you training them to become tax preparers for the peak season?
In the tax preparation industry, the best way to hire is to run a tax school before the season or at the first start of the season and teach people to do taxes. And then out of those classes, you get your employees.
Oh, nice. So that's what you're doing off season at Jackson. You're doing tax training.
Exactly.
Oh, genius. That's great. So, all right, now you've got trained employees the way that you want them. You've got a system that they'll follow to the T. So literally from the time the customer comes in, what's the paperwork you're asking for, the questionnaire, you're taking the customer right down like you said, it's a system that you follow it gets them to a great product at the end.
Precisely.
Nice. Now we've got we've got, and look, for a guy that wants to become a franchisor, now if I want to own one of those, do I need to be a tax preparer to own one?
No, actually, we discourage people from doing tax returns. We're looking for CEOs to run the business. Too many people buy a franchise. They buy a Subway franchise or a hamburger business to make subs and make hamburgers. And that's not what this is about. This is about hiring people to do the work. And almost all of our national training is to teach people to be CEOs of their business, to work on the business, not in the business.
I would say that's the hardest thing I've ever gone through as an entrepreneur, is staying out of the business. I mean, because ultimately I was great at doing the business. That's why I got into it. I was great at doing it. And customers loved me, and then the business grew, and staying out of the business and working on the business. Let's talk about that. How do you get them to do that? So what are they doing on an average day? What are they doing to support the business? What's the training you give an entrepreneur to say, hey, stop being in the business, work on the business? What are they doing all day long?
Yeah, in my career, that's a very tough thing. 2/3, somewhere between 60 and 80% of people aren't good delegators, and so they just can't let go. So they got to sit and do tax returns, or they got to clean the toilets, or shovel the sidewalk, or whatever they're doing. They just are unable to delegate and unable to delegate. And you just try to set example. One time I had a great employee, but she couldn't delegate, and she was in charge of about a dozen people. And I caught her one time, and I scolded her over the years. Caught her one time at the copy machine, and 3 or 4 of her people were at desks nearby, and I needed something copied. I was CEO of the company, and I walked over to one of her people and said, "Would you make copies of this for me?" And the person went over to the copy machine, kicked off their boss, and copied my stuff. And that was like a light went off in her head. And after that, she was a good delegate, because she saw, what am I doing standing up here at the copy machine when my people are just sitting there, and I'm the high paid one. I'm the one that's supposed to have thought and vision and big picture, and I'm sitting doing copies. So it's most people that can't delegate never change.
Got it. No, and that's, I mean, look, that's training 101 for the entrepreneur. Guys, if you're listening to this, not one of us hasn't gone through that experience, right? There's a lot of times I do it myself, right? I find myself jumping in. I've had coaches literally lock me in my office and go, you can't get out. I remember the first time I had this woman, she comes in, she goes, look, I'm going to lock you in I've told the story to you guys before. I'm going to lock you in your office. And I'm like, oh, great. Today I'll get to focus. She goes, no, you're going to sit in here and quit bothering people. Let those people do their work. You keep running out there and jumping on their air hose. You're in their way, right? As a leader, your job is to really create thought and really forecast a vision for this company. And you're out there, doing it, and you're getting in you've hired these great people to do great work. Now let them do what they've got to do. Now, you get them into, you get a system that operates well, and all the entrepreneur literally needs to do is follow that. Now, how detailed do you get? How do they market? How do they get new customers? How do they pay their bills? I mean, let's talk about how detailed is it in operating the business?
Yeah, again, you can't say a detail that we don't cover. And so if they want, we have a bookkeeping system, they can use the system, or we have a vendor that will do their bookkeeping for them. Some, believe it or not, half the tax people don't know how to do bookkeeping. So they have bookkeepers that do the business for them. We have a calendar of how to market every day during the tax season. So and one of the things that we've done at my last 2 companies, at Liberty Tax and at A-Tax, so we have, and they're out in the street and dancing and waving, drawing attention, because no one else is doing it. It's unique, right? Everyone else, there are thousands of businesses trying to get your attention. They're on TV, radio, podcasts. They're on social media. But we're the only ones with a dancing character. So, for example, during the tax season, we say each day, this is how many hours of costume character you need. And so everything's down to a daily basis. And this is how many tax preparers you need You need from 9 to noon, from noon to 5, from 5 to 9. This is how my taxpayers, receptionists, everything is down to the smallest detail.
Now, I mean, that to me feels like a system that people can follow. And I get the human brain kicks in and starts making up all kinds of excuses for not following those. Right? I know better. I'm doing better than them. When you're growing when you're growing the brand, right? You have these 6 locations. You got 6 locations in 82. Now, you remember your first franchisees?
Absolutely.
So talk to a little bit about that experience. So your first, handful of franchisees, how'd that go? And, what was the ups and downs to those? I mean, because I know that when you're growing the first franchisees, there's some ups and downs to those first franchisees.
Yeah, actually, I made a huge mistake when I started Mel Jackson / Jackson Hewitt. That our goal was, we had 6 offices, and H&R Block had 9,000. And my big, hairy, audacious goal is we're going to have 9,001 offices. So we needed to open 8,995 offices. And the mistake I made was not franchising from day one. And so I started in August. I had 6 locations. By January, I had 11. The 2nd January, I had 15. And the 3rd January, I had 22. And I realized that at this pace, it's not bad to grow from 6 to 22 offices in 2.5 years. But at this pace, I'm going to be 600 years old before I get bigger than H&R Block. And so we started franchising. So yeah. What we did to start franchising, we sold all of the existing offices to my employees. So my employees were my first franchisees. They had been my employees. So I went to each of the office supervisors of the 22 offices, said, would you like to own this one? And then not everyone wanted to do it. And so some other employees became franchisees in addition to the office supervisors. But we were able to sell all the offices to existing employees. And then now I had what you need when you franchise is you have to have validators. Someone that looks at coming in says, show me that it works. You say it works. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Prove it. And now I have all these employees that were making good money and happy. And so it was very easy to grow exponentially. Within 3 years, we went from 22 offices to 400 offices.
Nice. So now you sell your initial 22, right? You make your employees their franchisees. They're well trained because you trained them yourself, right? And they're validated, saying,
they're
hey,
proven.
Right, they're proven. Hey, come on in. You walk. So when you're doing an introduction to a new franchisee or new operator, you're walking in that office and they're talking to someone that's doing well.
Exactly. Nice. The key to franchising, and we haven't talked about this yet, but we can get into it. But most franchisors fail, and the key to franchising is very, very simple. It's when I say it, you'll say, "Well, that's obvious. Everyone should know that." But most franchisors fail because they don't understand or care about this one simple thing. And that is the key to being a great franchisor is happy, successful franchisees. If you have happy, successful franchisees, you're going to grow exponentially. If you don't, you're going to flop and fail.
And what's key to making them happy?
Well, first of all, the relationship with the franchisor is key, but also successful. They have to
make money.
They have to have a fair return on their investment. And investment isn't just money, it's time and money. So they have to feel that their return on their investment is fair, and they have to enjoy the business, the industry, and the relationship they have with the franchisor.
So give me a little bit of, how do you do that? Like, how did you get them to love to love your franchise? And so let's talk a little bit about that. So what's some of the secret sauce there?
Yeah, I've been blessed. Right? I've been blessed. I'm the only one that's built 2 of the top 100 retail chains in the country. And I think one of the reasons why, there's a couple of reasons why that I've been able to do that. And first reason is I always want what's best for each person. So when it's best for both of us, that's fantastic. But if it's not best for them to be a franchise, I don't try to convince them to be a franchise. I don't sell anyone on a franchise. When we bring in new franchisees, we look for people that belong, that fit in our system, and that are going to enjoy what they do. So we look first for attitude and have a culture of giving back and trying always to do what's best for everyone in our system, whether that's an employee, a franchisee, but most of all, the customers, of course. Our job is to exceed customers' expectations.
Now, I mean, a lot of success out of new franchise, I've watched over the years, is making sure that the person that you bring on is well capitalized, right? To make sure that they're, financially, capable of running this, because, it's not always perfect going through the startup of a business. So how do you, when you're looking at a franchisee, what's your logic about where they should be financially?
Well, I have a different take on it.
Go ahead.
What I've learned in my 5,200 franchisees, I learned a different definition for skin in the game. Everyone thinks skin in the game is dollars, the amount of money. But I've seen people come in with lots of money and fail abysmally. And I've seen people come in with no money and be wildly successful. So what skin in the game means to me is it's sort of when you play poker and you go all in. You mentally go all in. It's someone that's totally committed. It's more important to me to have an individual that's totally committed than it is for me to have someone wealthy, because wealthy people just look at return on investment for their dollars. The people that aren't wealthy are looking to seize the American dream. They work harder, smarter, longer hours, and do a better job day in and day out. So this is the way I feel. You need two things to succeed. You need people and money. You know what? It's a lot easier for me to get money than people. I built a $1 billion company. I built a $500 million company. I built two companies that were worth $1.5 billion with less than $20 million investment. And I will get money and lend it to you if you're great. If you're great, one of my superstars said, well, listen 98%. I will get you all the money you need. If you're a loser and won't listen even 90%, then I try to, you know what, you need to go find somewhere else to be extraordinary. You're not ever going to be extraordinary here.
Well, and some of that comes with wisdom. It comes with a little bit of scuffing your knees, right? I mean, some of that wisdom it gets beaten into people when they realize, all right, it's time for me to shut up and listen. My judgment is a lot. When I was young and dumb, I knew everything, and a little bit of life lessons taught me, all right, find people with wisdom, listen intently. That's a shortcome to really great growth, but that didn't come to me, intuitively at an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid. I was, full of piss and vinegar, ready to go, to conquer the world. But, I thought I knew it all. And, it took me a little bit of, getting out there and getting my knees skinned up a little bit. And then finding those guys who I got to be around, who I could go, wow, okay, that's what that's the real power. I'd watch some real wise folks who are great, great guys who taught me some great life lessons on how to become really valuable to the world, which ultimately equaled some more money. So, all right, now you're finding the people that have skin in the game, and give me a little bit of that. So, a franchisee comes to you and they're, hey, I'm going to borrow money from my dad, right? I'm going to borrow money from my mom to come put this together. I'm going to sell my house. I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure, and I'm sure with 5,800 franchisees, there's a 1,000 different looks of that. But is there a model that seemed to be the brightest one that worked the most often?
Well, in the initial days of franchising, we started franchising in '85. So in '85 until the major recession in 2008, the housing recession, most of the money that people invested and startup in my industry is very small. It's only $65,000 or $70,000. So it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
All right, so an investment I'm sorry, that's a good topic. So what's the franchise cost fee?
The franchise fee is 35.
35,000. All right,
Total investment, including everything, coming to training, hiring, the location, the security deposit, initial grand opening, marketing, everything combined, $70,000.
got it. And
back in the 80s and 90s, up until 2008, most people though can't write a $70,000 check. They would go get equity on their home.
Got it.
So most people were homeowners and would get equity on their home. Then that all changed, and with the housing industry crashing, and since then it's been most people borrow against their IRA or their 401k.
Got it. So
that's changed because of that recession.
And I'm sure there's all kinds of other financing that you guys as a franchisor start, supporting them and finding, ways for them to, people that lend money to franchisees and having that system for, all right, look, I now found the right person. Now let's get them qualified financially. And so now you're now $65,000 in for franchise fee and for the down payments and all the stuff that goes along with that. What's the build out cost?
That includes everything.
Wow.
All the cash you need to get started in this industry is $65,000 or $70,000.
That's got to be one of the lowest in the franchise world.
It is.
Yeah, I mean that's a great. I mean, so when you're going out to landlords, what are you expecting from them from a delivery?
Typically, you rent an office for either you always try to get a lease to end on April 30th, because if you move, you don't want to pay rent in May through December. So the typical startup lease is you take possession in November, December, you open the doors in January, and you'll have a 16-month lease so if I was going for next year, I'd have a 16-month lease ending in April of 26, or a 28-month lease ending in April of 27, typically. I mean, there's all kinds of different leases. The ideal lease would be just a tax season lease. And for example, Jackson Hewitt's in just during tax season in 3,000 Walmart. So that's a golden opportunity if you can find that. But typically it's either a 16-month lease or a 28-month lease. Typical rent is about $2,500 average around the country. And so you pay a security deposit, $2,500, you pay $2,500 first month's rent. You get in November and December, paint it, carpet it, whatever you need, and then you're ready to go in January.
Nice. Now, franchise listeners, this is one of the biggest things when I look at investment costs on a deal. The delivery of a space from the landlord, it varies dramatically. If I'm building restaurants, or if I'm doing Jackson Hewitt's, or if I'm doing whatever brands that we're going to build, people ask me, why was this one, $50,000? Why was this one $150,000? 9 times out of 10, I can show them it's in the delivery I get from the landlord. Now, a lot of times in the real estate world nowadays, there's what I call a cold dark shell, right? There's a developer who half baked the deal. They came in and they kind of underfinanced it. They wait for the franchise or the renter to come in and finish the deal. And what they'll do is they'll go to their bank and say, all right, I'm going to borrow enough to get the base building done. And then as the new tenant comes on board, they'll negotiate for some revenue to go build it out. But typically what they'll do is they'll put that money into the renters, what they'll call a landlord work letter. And they'll pay the franchisee either through rent credits or something to finish building out the space. Now, what John's talking about is, this is one of those ones where some people think it's valuable, right? And they go, hey, I got a cheaper rent because I built out my own space. And there may be some logic there. If you have cash up front, you have the cash and you want to negotiate that. But what I want to make sure is that I'm not paying, if the landlord says, for example, you wouldn't rent a space without lights. You wouldn't rent a house without lights. You wouldn't rent a space without bathrooms. You wouldn't rent a space with a house without electrical panels. Some of these developers give you a cold, dark shell, literally be sand on the floor, right? And you're looking at it going, all right, now I've got to put the floor in, I've got to put the walls in, I've got to put the lights in. All of that's cost. Now, it depends on the real estate deal, and this is where you need a little support for this. Some marketplaces are really tight, and you want to be there, right? There's a reason why you want to be in that mall, and you have to make a decision logic. Am I willing to go spend $100,000 of my money to finish this space, even though he may give me $110,000 in rent credit? Am I going to spend my cash up front to build that out, or would I rather go, hey, I'm not going to take the rent credit. I want you to build it out, right? And those decision logic. John, you've gone through that, right? Where the different cost to build out a space can dramatically change based on the delivery of a space.
Absolutely, and to simplify it for the audience, what usually happens is, to give a simple example, that let's say that you had a 24-month lease, and it costs $24,000 to do the build out. Well, you can spend the $24,000 yourself and get X rent, or the landlord says, well, if I'm going to spend the 24, then I'm going to get another 1,000 a month for 24 months to make up for it. So you're right. And we give our franchisees guidance on, okay, these are the pros and cons of each of those deals.
All right. So just knowing and supporting, going through. A lot of you guys have never done a real estate deal ever in your life, a commercial real estate deal. You may rent an apartment or rent a home. A lot of franchisees may have never done a real estate deal, and now you've got this broker who really is more concerned about a commission. They don't typically always have your best interest in mind. They may act like they do because they're brokers, but they're more concerned about commission. And you want to make sure that you're not making bad decision logic because you're so eager to get in. And then all of a sudden now you're paying for a landlord's build out. And exactly what John's talking about. Is it worth another $1,000 a month in my rent? Sometimes it may be. There's some great decision logic to do there. So now we get build out costs figured out. We've got the system to operate. Now, how are you keeping quality? What are you doing to do quality checks? Because a rogue franchisee can mess up a whole system.
Yeah, whoever has the worst service in the system that's the quality of name you're going to end up with. So franchisees want us to police the system. So we do it in several ways. One is you can order all of your desks and chairs and computers through us, or if you don't, then we require that we approve it. So we're always going to come in and approve the location, and we don't just give them advice on a lease. We require them we approve the lease. So we make sure they don't enter bad deals, because we require they're not allowed to lease a location without our approval.
Got it. So you're as a franchisor, you're doing lease approval, location approval. All right. And that circumvents them finding the wrong location. You're helping them. The idea is you're mitigating some of the risk at finding a bad location.
Yeah, we actually go out and look at locations with them. And typically in a territory, there'll be 3 to 5 locations. And we'll say, okay, if you go into that location, this is the revenue you can expect. If you go in the other one, this is the revenue you can expect. And then we'll help negotiate the deal. We don't generally talk, unless it's a national vendor like a mall, where we create deals for them nationally, or a Walmart. But unless it's a national vendor, we just give them advice and they deal with the landlord.
Nice. So I got it. So now you're helping them with the location find. So getting them into a system. Here's a system we're going to follow. We're going to help you find the right location to do it. Now you're going to monitor them while they're doing it to make sure they have quality control of the product they're delivering to the customer.
Exactly.
Right. And how do you do that and keep them, keep that high level, right? How are you making sure that customer is happy when they walk out? Because look, a couple of bad reviews about your brand, and that it affects everybody.
We do one thing that almost no one does, and that is we call every customer. So
wow. Okay,
we
so
call every customer. We don't send postcards or emails, or we don't do surveys. We call the customers. And again, it's a unique differentiating advantage. And not only does it ensure for us that we're exceeding customers' expectations, but customers love it, and it improves the retention. And also, people are, what we've learned over the years is the tax preparers are not good at asking for referrals. And so most of them don't ask for a referral or do it poorly. So this personable person calls up a customer, says, how do we do for you? 95% are happy. Say, okay, could you refer customers to you? So we get higher retention, higher referrals, and we know on the fly how we're doing. We can adjust it. And Anthony, we've been talking a lot about the location and the desks and chairs and so forth, but the whole experience comes down to that 30 to 60 minutes with the preparer. So that's what we're really evaluating. You could have a shoddy location and a great preparer, and you're going to still win. You could have a horrible preparer in the most beautiful location in the country, and you're going to fail. So it all comes down to that experience one-on-one with the tax professional, and we measure that by calling our customers.
That's awesome. So, John, I just love that audience. I want you to see, the system he's got in place here, right? And having someone who's gone through this for thousands of locations on your team, as as you're thinking about taking your brand, you have an aspiration of growing your brand to be the biggest in the country, to take it somewhere. As you're listening, I hope you're seeing that. Look, you've got some work to do here, and having a coach or someone like John who can go through and guide you through this process. Now, John, you go from there to long-term development. How many of these franchisees end up becoming multi-unit franchisees?
Most at least try it. And as I said earlier, that many suffer from delegation incapability. So about 2/3 end up multi-franchise with multi-locations. 1/3, a quarter or a third just have one because they can't delegate. And the average number of offices in this industry nationally with H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, Liberty, and ATEX is about 6 or 7 locations per franchisee.
Wow.
But a quarter or a third only have one. If you can do 2, you can do 15. But a lot of people can't make that jump to the second location because the person's down the road 10 miles and out of sight, and I can't delegate to them. I'm just not capable.
It's a mindset that my judgment, it plagues a lot of us entrepreneurs, right? It's a mindset that really is tough to step back and get that your system's operating itself. And we could talk about that for hours. We'll keep going. That I want to get into. You're now doing. You've got loyalty brands, and you've got 8 more franchises that you're developing. I mean, the well never stops with you. You're magical. Let's talk about some of the new brands that you got coming out now.
Yeah, the most exciting one is and an industry I never thought I'd be in, and it's pets. And pets are in such demand, and that world is exploding. It's growing by 12 to 15% a year. It's expected to double every 5 years for the next 10 years. People love their pets more than their children.
Listen, my dog Gucci is the most loved animal in this house, and we spend crazy money on that dog. When I was a kid, my family didn't do that. Today, I don't know. We're insane about this dog, and it's grooming. So talk to me about the dog. What's the?
Yeah, it's mobile dog grooming, and so it's the right time because people love their pets, and especially COVID exacerbated that made it even more impactful. When people were staying home during COVID, 10% more households got a pet, and people they spend untold amount of money on their pets, and it's a perfect time for mobile because our society's changed. I mean, there's Uber Eats and all these delivery services now for food, and there's people who pick you up at your door with Lyft and Uber, and Amazon delivers everything I want. I never go to the grocery store, right? So it's a mobile world that we want more services, and mobile grooming is just exploding. We have that is our fastest growing franchise. We'll be number 1 in the country by the end of 2024, and it's going to be a household name, and like Jackson Hewitt is in 5 years.
So talk to me a little bit about what's the name of the brand.
Zoomin Grumman.
Zoom and Groom It. Great name, right? And what does it cost to have your dog or your pet groomed? It's dog grooming, right?
Well, yes, it depends where you are, so I have to be careful.
Yeah.
Right?
So give me.
If you're in Los Angeles, it's different than if you're in
I
Jackson.
got it.
Right? So it typically costs about 25 more than taking it into a storefront.
Got here, which is look. I'm happy. I'm happy to pay 25 more than a storefront. Happy, whatever. I $50 more. I mean, look, you come to me with same thing with like do my car. Look, I'm happy if I can sit at my house and work, and you can come groom my dog on a regular basis when I need him. That's great. So, what's a typical investment for a franchisee?
There's two investment. One is the initial 60,000, and then there's a $90,000 van. But you can lease. Almost everyone leases the van, so that only costs a few thousand. So the typical is about 65 or 70,000 cash that's put in if you lease the van, and almost everyone leases the van over about 8 years. So you pay a couple thousand a month instead of a lump sum of 90,000. So most people get all in for cash of less than $70,000.
Wow. And that seems like one you could grow a very nice network of multiple vans out there and getting out there.
It's cash flow positive from day one. The day you open your book, 3 weeks in advance. It's such a demand all over the country. We have our franchisees call locally and say, how long will it take me to get my dog groomed? Everywhere in the country, it's 3 weeks or more.
Easy, right? My groomer today, it's easily, it may be a month and a half out. I mean, if you're not on their books now, they're so jammed up and it's crazy. So I think you're hitting the marketplace at another, at a bright time. John, what other ones do you have out there?
We have ATAX, of course, which is a competitor to Jackson Hewitt and Liberty. We have a little medical school, which is a feel-good business because it teaches kids from 4 to 14. We have about 150 medical modules. And we give them a lab coat and a stethoscope and see all these little kids in class. I think we're going to have more doctors and nurses because of our after school and summer camps for little medical school. We have inspection boys. We inspect homes. We have a business broker. Business brokers are not commonly known. That people deal with realtors all the time. Yeah. There are hundreds of thousands of realtors in this country that buy and sell personal houses, but there's only 4,000 locations of business broker that buy and sell businesses. So that's and our most recent one is roofing, siding, and solar. And so we're excited about that. There's been so many storms over the last 30 years that roofing is fantastic.
Great. And solar is look, there's a 20-year run that will, I mean, this next 20 years for development of any electrical off grid, getting more efficient, the impact to electrical. That's, it's a great business. I mean, I've forecasted that anything in the electrical growth, the solar, any of that stuff that's really providing more energy for the grid, the home, the system, will be a great 20-year growth. I mean, phenomenal, John. Look, I love having you on. Your wisdom is it's palpable. You can really tell you've done this a lot. Our audience, if they want to get a hold of you and bring you in or consult for them, or they want to become a franchisee for one of the brands that we just talked about, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
It's at loyaltybrands.com, the name of the parent company, Loyalty Brands. And I'm just JOHN at loyaltybrands.com. And John, if you email me, reach out, I'll be happy to send you a free copy of my book.
Awesome. And the name of the book?
I Compete.
I'm going to put that down below, right? I'll put that down in the book, and you can get that where, on Amazon?
Yep. Bestseller on Amazon. Yep.
Awesome. John,
you're get it free from me.
Or you get it free from him. Audience, come on, take that on right now. You got a free book from a guy this is not some guy in a coffee shop who's making up nonsense. This is a guy who has a proven track record over thousands and thousands of locations. You want to grow, you want to look for a mentor or coach. I mean, not just that, he lives in a castle in Virginia. Get to know John. He's got his life and really what he's created for a life that's phenomenal. John, I am so proud to have you on the show. It's been a gift to have you. Anything else? Last minute words?
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
audience, as always. Last week I noticed that you guys made it to the end of the podcast, but there's over 47% of you that haven't liked and subscribed. It's crazy. I got all these great listeners. You guys are getting in there. We had over 2,000 downloads last week, but 47% of you did not like and subscribe. Would you guys take a second and do that now? Joe and the team in the background, all the hard work they put together, it means the world to them, and it does to us. It gets us great guests like John on here. So please take a second and like and subscribe right now if you could. As always, we're so damn grateful that you listen.